So first on the agenda, I'll just be giving some brief context on the driver shortage and the purpose of this webinar. Jenna will be then giving us a few minutes of highlights on the features of our software which can help operators to keep their drivers happy and improve their driver experience. Once Jenna's finished, each of our three speakers will do a quick intro, and then we'll move straight into the panel discussion, start answering questions as well. And then finally, once the webinar has ended, we will move to the lounge area for any networking and further discussion, as I mentioned. So again, just a quick intro. So we've been talking about the driver shortage for quite a long time now. And we are starting to see some operators growing again, and having some success with recruitment. But the long-term trends are still a problem for the industry. Demand is back to pre-pandemic levels, but because of the driver shortage, we're seeing a lot of passengers who have lower confidence in taxi and private hire services, and this is threatening the long-term recovery and growth of the industry. We're still in a situation where a lot of operators have lost a large portion of their fleets, and we're still seeing this issue with older generations of drivers hitting retirement. We're still seeing these new regulations being implemented by the government around the tax check. That's coming in on April 4th. Clean air zones, fortunately, Manchester's been delayed, but we're still seeing these being pushed through. Migration obstacles. Obviously, the war in Ukraine has now cranked up the cost of fuel. There are all sorts of sort of long-term obstacles that we need to handle. So we've been focused quite heavily on how to support operators during this period, and sort of educating operators on the tools at their disposal to recruit new drivers, and helping start those kind of conversations for operator collaboration in that respect. But driver retention can be just as important, if not more important, than recruitment. At the end of the day, if you're bringing in 50 new drivers a week, fantastic, but it's not going to matter if you're also losing that same amount each week. And ultimately, to survive and to grow, operators need to keep the drivers that they're bringing in for as long as they possibly can. So with that said, let's go straight to Jenna, sorry, to talk through some of the features that Autocab software has available to help keep drivers happy. Over to you, Jenna.
Great, thanks, Robert. So I'm going to be that annoying person that can't do their own slides. So Chloe's actually sharing the slides for me because I can't do it myself for some technical reason. So I'll be doing the old Chris Whitty. Next slide, please. So when the slides are up, I'll start. Obviously, just a little bit of background while Chloe brings the slides up. So I joined Autocab in August, and as Robert said, I'm head of the product team. So the product team at Autocab are the people that are speccing our features into the development team, and then working really closely with the development team on delivering these as quickly as possible. So just waiting on slides.
Sorry, Jenna, I'm just having a couple of issues, but I'll be in a sec.
It's completely fine. I'm not gonna.
If you want to send them to me, all three of us could try presenting.
I will go back onto Teams. Oh, here we go.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Right, okay, great. Let me just cancel Teams down so then I'm not getting pepped. Great, okay, so I'm just going to be talking through a few of our product features that could help with retaining drivers, and also some stuff that's in the pipeline. So the first feature I wanted to talk about is currently only on Android, but iOS is coming very soon. But our driver companion app now has been improved to recognise vehicle capability. So on the broadcast screen, drivers will now be able to see in real time where their vehicle capability could be of most value across all of the zones. So really positive new feature that we've had some really good feedback on. Next slide, please. The next feature I wanted to quickly talk about is bid for pre-booking. So this allows drivers to bid for future work within the driver companion, and they can also filter this screen as well so that they only see jobs that they want to bid for. Later in the year, we're going to be adding to the driver companion an ability to do this for active jobs. And these features have been designed to help your drivers better plan out and optimize their shifts. So this has been a really well received feature. Next slide is, so the document upload is really about saving the driver time so they don't need to come into the office. And it also automates the reminders when licenses need updating. So with this feature, they'll upload the information. It's then sent to the office for verification and approval, and it can then even be approved or rejected. So that whole process of the back and forth, if this wasn't like sort of what like they didn't have the right thing, can all be done within the app to save everyone time. The next one is pricing zones. So pricing zones allow you to draw zones which you can apply charges to. So these can be attached to existing pricing tariffs for extra costs such as pick up and drop off charges at airports. And this can help give the drivers more compensation for certain trips. Next slide is a very similar situation, but this is charging zones. So as Robert mentioned, with the emissions potentially coming into Manchester, this is useful for adding areas where there are tolls, congestion charges, emissions, for instance, and this can make sure that the cost of that additional charge is going to the passenger rather than the driver, so that they can get more compensation. Another great feature is actually just a simple setting within management. So this is called the out of area dead mileage compensation toggle. And this allows you to build into your rules if a driver is going out of a pricing zone to pick somebody up, then you can add additional costs to this journey. Again, it's just to make sure that the driver is happy with going and picking that job up. But yeah, it's a little bit unknown on that one. Next slide. So a lot of you will probably know about the wall, but I think it's a good one just to reiterate in terms of why it's so good for drivers. So when your business becomes too busy to provide rides to every customer, that's what we call hitting the wall. And at that point, you can set rules for which jobs you allow through. So as you can see on the screenshot, we put customers into happy, average, bad, and new, and then you can set rules depending on what you want when you're busy. So, for instance, in this screenshot, at all times, whether it's phone, app, IVR, third party, you'll always allow your happy customers to get rides. The benefit to the driver for this is that whilst they're busy, they're not having to deal with bad customers. They might not have to deal with new customers, and this can really help with sort of reducing the amount of no-shows and then leading to them not getting the right amount of money whilst they're on shift. The other element of wall broadcast of the wall, is the ability to set up notifications for drivers. Now, you don't have to do this for drivers off shift, but you can do it for both. And this is an option to allow drivers to know when there is a potential to make money in a certain zone because it's really busy, but completely configurable in the system. Another thing for drivers, and again configurable, is your ability to show when pricing surges are happening in each zone. Again, giving drivers more information and the ability to make more money while they're on shift. Pay by Link's a very new feature and is actually currently only available for Judo Pay. Payo/Sage haven't built the feature on their end yet. So this, although feels like a passenger feature, it actually can help drivers. So now if a passenger has wrongly booked a journey and it's booked as cash, but they actually wanted to pay card, the driver will be able to initiate a pay by link at the end of the journey. And so this can mean that it saves them time having to take the passenger to a cash machine and then sort that out and then retake them back, so they can quickly get onto the next job. Similarly to that is we've also added a message within the passenger app to encourage customers to update their default payment. So when passengers are changing their payment type within the app, previously it wouldn't have encouraged them to set that as default. Then that can mean that they're booking a journey with the wrong payment method or the wrong payment type card, and again causes driver annoyance at the end of the journey. So we're hoping that this will help with that. So as I mentioned, as well as features that we've already got in the pipeline, there are some more that we've been looking at to help improve driver retention. So we're about to make changes to the pre-bookings, which will allow you to configure your system so drivers cannot be late for pre-booked work. So the dispatch algorithm will check the driver has any pre-booked jobs. It will then check the distance of the job that they're on versus the estimated completion time versus, and then it works out that versus manages it by 5 minutes. If the driver can't make it, they're then skipped for that job, but they're then told that they're in a late pre-bookings mode. And this is obviously to help with passengers, but to help with drivers, making sure they can always get to their jobs on time and they're not therefore then dealing with customers that are annoyed by them being late. Dual queue position is a new feature that's going to enable drivers to remain in the same position when they're in a zone within a zone. So when they're moving into a city centre zone, they can keep the zone position they were just previously in. And this is again to encourage them to make sure that they get the next job if it's deserved to them as they are moving around. And finally is the ability to pay rent through the driver companion app. So this isn't live yet, but it's coming again initially for Judo Pay. And this feature will save the driver time as they won't need to come into the office to pay their rent that's due. So yeah, hopefully we'll see that soon. So yeah, I didn't want to take up too much of the time today because obviously want to get straight to the panelists, but thank you for listening. And that's my email address. I'll also drop it into the message chat. So if anyone's got any questions or wants to talk to me about any of the features that I've brought up today, please feel free. I'd be happy to have a conversation. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenna. So yeah, there's a host of features out there that we're conscious we've developed, but we want to make sure operators are making the most of to either to improve the fares that their drivers are earning, or or just to take a little bit of hassle out of their lives in terms of cancellations. Really, there's a lot of there's a few things that with a small tweak here or there, you can really improve the quality of the driver's experience through our software. So wants to make sure that was highlighted. And of course, if you have any other questions, Matt Welford is in the chat at the moment. He'll also be in the networking lounge, so feel free to chat to him afterwards to really deep dive that. So yeah, without further ado, let's go straight to our panelists. Let's begin with Rachel of AAA Taxis, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Yeah, Rachel of AAA Taxis. I've been in the industry for 10 years now, and I think I'm getting known throughout the industry for my females in the fleets initiative.
Yeah, it's a really interesting piece, that, and I think it's definitely worth discussion today. I believe in terms of one key area is in terms of how do you retain female drivers. So yeah, let's definitely talk through that. Let's go with Aqeel next. I think everyone probably knows Aqeel already, but it'd be great to do a quick intro.
Aqeel, Arshad, Director of Streetcars Manchester.
Fab. And finally, David.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Hunter, CEO of Take Me. I've been in this industry for about 22 years. Prior to that, I used to be Ali Jones.
Great. So yeah, just to kick things off, sort of a starter for 10. what would you say the most successful thing that you've done, the number one success that you've had, is with driver retention for your fleet? I mean, you may have 10, but if you were to pick one, what's worked best for you?
I think observing the change of relationship between operator and driver from master and servant has been very symbiotic. They need us, we need them. We've increased our driver department threefold. We've got a lot more people, and we have an open door policy where they can turn up anytime and we put them first. Some of the things that Jenna was mentioning, we really do encourage, because the less that we have to do admin for the drivers, the more we can speak to them and spend time on positive things. And we've really seen a change in drivers going from a sort of mob mentality when they'll sort of throw their PDAs up in the air to coming in and talking to us. So I've really enjoyed that change, partly brought on by COVID, partly brought on by the workers, and just a general change in the industry, collaboration.
Yeah, makes
For
sense.
for us, it's been driver retention is very important for us. And for us, I'd say the key success has been when a new driver joins is nurturing that driver for the next 4 weeks, speaking to him every single week, making sure that driver's happy. And I think if you can get the driver working for 4 weeks, I think you're going to have that driver for long term. So one of the big issues that we used to have is we used to have quite a lot of drivers come every week and quite a lot of drivers leave at the same time. So we're trying to plug the ones that are leaving. We're still getting quite a lot coming. So we're trying to create that relationship. When the driver comes, 1 week later, somebody will phone them and say, how's your week? I know it's your first week. How are you doing? Any concerns? Because obviously, as a new driver, they go through induction, but a lot of them goes through one ear, goes out the other. So obviously, it's a lot to take as well. So through that process, we speak to the driver if they're unsure. Because one of the big things about drivers is it's that easy now is to join a fleet and go to another fleet. You can hop fleets. It's that easy now, because I think that loyalty now within industry is slowly slipping away. So for us, that has really helped us. We've noticed that we're retaining a lot more drivers now, which is working well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and it specifically that there is a sort of a 4 week period after where the relationship's at its most risky. Yeah. And David, what about yourself?
It's I think both Aqeel and Rachel have touched on it. It's about retention. We have the 2 R's, which is recruitment and retention. And yes, back in the old days, it was a case of we'd all be focused on getting the work in and not so worried about the drivers. And you'd have those run-ins with the drivers. But it's switched now, whereas all the marketing and everything's towards the driver. And we kind of operate in different areas, from cities like Birmingham to small rural areas up in Yorkshire and around the country. And there is a difference in drivers. Obviously, in those urban areas, they've got more choice. So a lot of drivers are sometimes just going for the best offer and deal, which obviously we can't compete always with Uber on some of those race to the bottom prices. So where we win as a local operator, and that's all of us on this webinar, is the fact, like Aqeel was saying, you can have those one-on-one times with drivers. We can hold their hand if they're new, build that relationship, do a newsletter, do driver days, lots of incentives that don't have to cost you big money or a race to the bottom of the pricing. So yeah, it is about relationship building now and spending time and resources and having managers in place that have, like Rachel was saying, having those one-to-one calls with them. So yeah, I think the focus is definitely on retention and relationship.
Yeah, that's the point you make about the 2 R's. I'd be interested to hear from Rachel and Aqeel if you treat this in a similar way, where they're the 2 main pillars for your driver strategy, and whether when you're thinking about recruitment, you're also combining that with the retention, with any efforts that you're doing with retention. Obviously, Aqeel, you're saying, your entire onboarding process is sort of combined, where you're recruiting in, but then you've also got 4 weeks making sure they stay with you. But I wonder if you're doing the same, Rachel.
Yeah, so we run a monthly driver training course, which is usually new drivers. It can be drivers changing their license. And so that relationship starts right before that. And we find that the drivers need help all the way through that process. And they may have little worries, they may have big worries. They even need help finding vehicles. We're looking at ways to lease them for them, employ anything that they need. We will see if we can do it. And by the time they become a driver through that process, we've got a great relationship. But I do agree with Aqeel, it can be a revolving door if we do not retain them from day one and keep very, very close to them. So we listen to everything they've got to say now. When we make decisions, we listen to them. We're not saying we're going to do what they say, but we will always listen.
Yeah. I mean, for us as well, we've started an academy as well. I think that we've seen a lot of good results from that as well. So we work with Wolverhampton Council. We do tests here in Manchester. We take them from start to finish. I think David and Rachel, I think you guys are doing the same as well. I think always from that's been a great success for us. And we started this we initially did it in 2016, but we just restarted again in December. Since December, we've processed so far 150 drivers up until now. Probably about 30 of them have got the badges now, so they're on the road working.
Yeah, it does work, the academies. The only danger we've found, and we run them around the country on a weekly basis, is that sometimes you could be training them for Uber, especially with a Wolverhampton.
No, we can have a percentage, which is going to leave.
So, it's about then retaining them and trying to have that relationship with them, so it makes them think twice about going to Uber. If you do local offers, like Rachel was saying, getting cars leased and holding their hand a bit more. But I mean, it's a tough market out there.
I think this Uber local things seems to help as well, because if you tell them in the beginning, we're doing Uber, then a lot of them are saying, no, I don't need to go there. I'd rather just work for you.
And there is a benefit, isn't there? I mean, we offer more diverse range of jobs as well, from account customers to runs. They're not just the local short journeys that maybe the Hackney trade used to do. We've got more diversity in the type of work we do, which makes it less monotonous and more rewarding.
Yeah, it's from the kind of a partial outsider perspective, it seems like it's the opportunity to, the drivers may come in thinking, oh, I want, I've seen the massive model, the Uber model or Bolt or whatever it is. And they come in as an easy way to get a license for that. And then through exposure to a local operator, they then learn that there's a nicer partner to do business with, than there might be for someone else. So it's sort of, that recruitment process also operates as a way of kind of capturing them and capturing their loyalty and showing them different ways of working as well. Because sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, the other thing with those courses is, even if they do go off elsewhere, you've got their data, so you can sort of continue mail shotting them and communicating, offers and deals you've got going yourself. So at least you've captured their data and they're on your books for,
We put a condition in the contract that you have to work at Street Pass for 6 months.
Yeah. Does that work, Aqeel? Do they adhere to?
I'd say 80% of the time it works, but you're always going to get that. I think. But I think now as well, if we do, because a lot of them we already know they all want to go to Uber, don't they? You get a lot of people coming out, I want to work for Uber, and we'll just say turn them away. I'm not going to waste all that time for you just to go somewhere else. But I think, like I was saying before, when we mentioned to them that, okay, we've got a partnership, we're doing Uber local, and we explain to them how that works, probably about 100% of the drivers are saying, okay, I'd rather work for you because I know I'm going to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, we've seen that. I was going to say, obviously he's not here, but 001 taxis have seen exactly that happening with drivers coming on board because they know that they can do both sides of it. Yeah,
it's a bit different for him because he doesn't have a presence in Oxford. Sorry, Rachel. It doesn't. They don't have a presence in Oxford, so it's a bit different. He's in a bit.
True.
I think one of the ways, before we changed the way we were, the thought of being Uber-like and not having the drivers in the office was very appealing. But I think one of the things that we've been able to do is when the drivers have a problem with licensing, perhaps there's a complaint against them, very often the complaint isn't upheld by the facts, but we can help them straight away get those facts, and we can support them, and they really appreciate that, because they often feel that anything that's said about them is believed to be true, and that they often attend licensing events with already guilty but having to prove their innocence. So I think that's something that we've been able to support them with over and above the sort of Uber type.
That's a really good point, wasn't there? There was a point where we thought, well, we'll close the offices to drive, and we started shutting them down and going for more technology. But you know, when you compare a large fleet to, say, a 50-car fleet, now the 50-car fleet, you know, in a small market town, the owners will know each one of those drivers. They'll have gone to weddings and parties. They would have lent them money at Christmas. You had those relationships where, you know, and I think we're going back to that. You know, we kind of undervalued that, and as you say, you know, open the doors again and help them with problems.
Yeah, something else we've been exploring. I think people may have been aware I did a webinar with Collective Benefits. They're one of the only companies that actually provide benefits for workers. And while it's quite new, it is really valuable that the driver could perhaps get sick pay or accident pay and still retain his worker relationship. So we're starting to explore those sorts of angles as well.
Have you gone live on that yet, Rachel, or are you still?
We've used it for our passenger assistants in the first place because we were losing those through a revolving door. People were picking them up at schools and taking them off almost the same day. So we've gone live on that, and so far so good. And we're looking for more and more ways we can give the drivers benefits from being a collective group.
Because we were going to sign with them before COVID, then obviously COVID come. Then
they're on today, I believe. I believe they're in the audience.
Well,
the emails
probably you afterwards.
Probably shouldn't reveal that you'll be having a sales conversation in half an hour.
And I think the other thing not to underestimate is how important updating the driver companion is. I really appreciate that some discussions I had with Autocab a few years ago have now been put into place, because the drivers get so frustrated if the maps are wrong, if the pricing's wrong, if they can do things easily. So I think that's something that's always got to happen, a complete update on a regular basis to keep them engaged.
Yeah, because they do compare it to Bolt or Uber, don't they? I mean, to be fair, we've just moved some of our places across from iCabby to Autocab, and the Autocab driver companion is brilliant compared to that. But yeah, to keep that updated is key.
Keep making new initiatives.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, that's interesting actually, that there's an expectation, I guess, from a lot of drivers these days, if they've had, oh, my lights have gone, that's all. There's an expectation, I'll turn them on in a sec once I've stopped talking, but yeah, there's this, there's sort of technology expectations from drivers in terms of the user experience of competitor apps, essentially. So a lot of the technology that you're using has to be up to parity with that. But I wondered if it's, if it's more general than that, if what other important, I guess, cultural changes you've seen have there been between drivers today versus drivers pre-pandemic, versus drivers, let's say 5-10 years ago?
We talk to drivers individually. We don't talk to them in groups anymore because we want to help the individual drivers, but we do a lot of events where they come along. We made a mistake recently. We had an event and we ran every question we could think of past them. And then we took on something that we hadn't run past them, where they were really upset. So we said, well, that's fine. We'll always run stuff past you going ahead. And we do that now. I'm not saying we're always going to take on board their views, but if they feel they've had a say, they feel that symbiotic relationship is very alive.
Right. So there's sort of I guess, like just representation from the operator in how they're doing business.
I don't think there's a huge difference between pre-COVID and COVID, but I think there's a generational difference in the driver. So your Uber generation driver aren't that used to communicating with the office or indeed the customer, like going in or knocking on doors. We try to sort of implant this line in their heads, think chauffeur rather than taxi driver, because actually a smile doesn't cost you anything, but just by opening a door could be a 50p tip or a £1 tip, 20p, it doesn't matter. But if you're doing, I don't know, 600 jobs a week or X amount a year, that could be, £5,000 or £6,000 in your pocket at the end of the year. So, it's about changing their attitudes. It's not just, app generation, text, and, it's about communicating and doing those little extra bits as well.
And I think we're very happy to have survived COVID and come out of it fairly unscathed. But I cannot underestimate the hard work it's been, because although our fleet is still very close to pre-COVID now, it's actually made up of all brand new drivers. So the work and investment and time that has gone into that has been a great deal. So although it looks like, it's all happy, it's actually been extremely hard work, and hopefully it's a good foundation to build on for the future.
I think with the drivers, the communications is key with the driver. And I think the drivers just want a platform where they can air their opinions. As a business, obviously, you try to run your business in a partnership with the drivers. So it doesn't work all the time, but it's important that you hear some of the concerns your drivers take. Feedback's very important for a business, and it's up to you how you react to the feedback that you get from the drivers. And what we notice is that speaking to the driver, the communication side, that really helps drivers and keeps the drivers happy as well. And they feel like they're more part of a family, more part of a business, rather than them just being told this is what's going to happen. It's going to happen like this, like this, like this. Rather than you say, what do you think of these ideas? And they'll feedback ideas to you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I wonder, sort of from what you were saying, David, this kind of generational difference. With Uber drivers, is it, or with that kind of Uber generation, is it is that cultural difference this sort of a similar thing with the relationship between the driver and the operator, as well as between the driver and passenger? Because ultimately, if the norm is a sort of like Uber, which is like the Amazon of the transportation right now, this kind of relatively difficult to get hold of a human, that sort of thing. Whereas a local operator, you have a much more one-to-one relationship, lots of feedback and communication. Do they get surprised if they sign on with you and work with you?
Yeah, or? I think it's different. I mean, I was, when we started our taxi company, we'd notice if, I don't know, Mrs. Miggins down the road hadn't booked a taxi for a couple of days, we'd send a driver around just to check she was okay and didn't need any sort of assistance. So do they change when they come to an operator? Well, I think part of our culture of being a private hire firm is we are different. We're on the ground, so we know our customers better than Uber, because they're not just an algorithm, they're real people, and we can adapt quickly. So I don't know, for an example, if somebody's lost their wallet in the car, they don't have to send an email off to San Francisco. They can call up and we can get that car back to them. So naturally, the driver will adapt to a more personal sort of service, I think. And and obviously if they're seeing tips as well, they quickly learn that actually to be more human and more personal actually is more rewarding, not just on the human level but on a financial level as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing which I see a bit of a divide in the industry on is the subject of driver safety and how it's broached, because obviously for a lot of people coming into the industry, I think probably especially for female potential female drivers coming into the industry, if you're Googling the industry, if you literally through Google or go on the news, there's a lot of negative press either about drivers doing something bad or about passengers doing something bad to drivers. It's one or the other. So I wonder if I'm kind of wondering about how you tackle safety in the context of talking to drivers and making sure that they feel safe and comfortable in what they're doing, how they're working for you.
I think training is the key. There's a lot of training courses out there. I think one of the biggest training courses that we've been able to run and help drivers with is conflict management. how to deal with a conflict, when to walk away. I mean, obviously they're logged into the hub, we can track them, they can send emergencies, things like that. But unless they're dealing with that conflict in a minute, what's the point of, arguing over 50p? Just drive away. We can blacklist you, we can deal with it afterwards. So I think that's been very helpful. And encouraging drivers to come and talk about the problems so that we can build up a data about the customer and where not to pick up from and where to pick up from, not to pick up from parks and things like that. In terms of females, there's a lot more we can do in terms of what work they do. School runs, account work, local authority work, hospitals. They're all requesting female drivers. So they don't have to be coming outside a pub on a Friday night picking up a drunk. There are ways around it.
I think an important thing is what we do. We screen the customer before we dispatch the job to the driver. So if a call does come, and if a customer's not used us before, zero-time caller, and if the guy's sounding a bit rough on the phone, we won't send him a taxi. For us, the safety of the driver is the most important thing. So we have a procedure for our drivers. We tell them, look, in event of a situation, this is what you do. From our side, we try to prevent that issue happening. So if it is a call, or even if it's an app job, the guys will look at the app, they look at the email address that it's booked from, and if it doesn't look right, we won't send it out. And we train the drivers to ask the customer, make sure that if it's a certain amount of money, make sure you ask for the money up front. And we've got all that literature in the car, so the customer can't start arguing with the driver, say, why are you asking for money up front? It's company policy at the end of the day. Driver's fully entitled to ask for money up front. So it's about training the driver and trying to stop the problem at source. And I think one thing that we realise is that we rather have the problem on the phone, or rather have the problem on the door, rather than the driver being on his own with 3 people in the car.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's also the guidebooks is a sort of you're taking the hostile decision away from the driver and into a guidebook, so it's like it's not personal, it's just business. So yeah, that's a great idea. David, interested to hear your thoughts.
The safety aspect is key, and especially if you've got female drivers. Pretty much the same procedure as my colleagues here have presented. It's taking money up front, a lot of common sense on calls as well. You get to know. In the past, we used to also have a lot of fraud on card payments as well. We coming from certain areas where it's going to be a chargeback, so you get educated to these things. But that's it. There's always somebody there to help. If there's a breakdown, we can coordinate that driver getting picked up, his recovery, even though it might not be a fleet car. It's really gold star service that I think private hire operators offer compared to driving for Bolt or Ola, etc. Just admiring your dog there, Rachel.
Yeah, so cool. Ever work with children and animals?
He matches the car.
He does.
I was going to say, every webinar we get either a dog or a baby. It's one or the other.
Somebody's asked a question about what our views are on collaborating with other taxis.
Yeah, I'll be interested on that, because I think that's another kind of hot topic, is where does collaboration make sense and where does competition make sense, So yeah, I'd love to get so just to clarify, that's Ehsan's asked, what are to the room, what are your views on collaborating with other local taxi companies, whether that's in a retention context or in general? What do you think?
We've done a collaboration in a few places, Plymouth being one of them. Admittedly, they're both companies that Take Me have bought, but they've still remained as separate limited companies, separate operating style, separate management. And they've done a soft merge on Autocab, and that's worked really well because they have a different client base, but they're kind of helping each other with that overflow of work, and it seems to work. And we're working on doing something very similar with we've just bought one in Taunton, and although we've not bought the rival, we're going to be working with the rival doing a soft merge there. So we're looking into that. So I think collaboration is key. The other thing is, if you are talking to your competitors, so if you do get a bad driver, then talk to each other, because quite a lot in the past, a lot of drivers have, given you bad service. Not all drivers are perfect, and then moved across to your competitors and done the same there. So it's good to kind of like share that knowledge with your competitors rather than just laughing at them for taking you on. So I think collaboration is key for it.
Yeah, I mean the most important thing is trust.
Mm-hmm.
Do you trust your competitor?
Yeah, I think it also depends if you're in a competitive market. I mean, some of your competitors are actually, they kind of fit well together because they might be doing a different type of hotel or just out of the city somewhere. But obviously in a competitive area like Manchester, Birmingham, London, possibly Liverpool, it's a bit more difficult to have those relationships because you've been at war with each other since the conception.
I'm not war on anyone, but the most important thing, like I said, it comes down to the trust issue.
Yeah.
You trust them if you're looking to collaborate. What's the ulterior motive for that competitor? I wouldn't trust them.
We have to collaborate because a lot of local authority work and a lot of the smaller people around us don't. But we've been offering franchising to anyone local that wants to take advantage of our driver department, anything that we can do that we've got set up that they just couldn't afford to do as a smaller company. And I suppose in a way iGo is about collaborating, isn't it, really? So yeah, collaboration is the way forward, as long as you say, as Aqeel says, you've got your T's crossed and your
you need your boundary points. I mean, the thing is with us, we've all got different markets and different ways of doing things. So I still am a member of the Ride Group, which was a similar sort of network. But operating a taxi company in Newcastle is different to operating a taxi company in Oxford, say. So there is different laws because it's not completely regulated across the UK. So you have to take that into account as well.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying about trust is kind of the key thing. Ultimately, solutions like iGo are supposed to create an environment where you can, either you trust the people you're working with, or you trust the tech to, you trust the contract. So it's, I think that ultimately is the core of it. The other thing, sort of similar subject, in terms of collaboration, David, you were talking about, if you've had acquisitions of smaller operators, those drivers are going, retention is going to be your number one thing, because you're acquiring a group of drivers who are used to working in a certain way and working for a certain business, and they're going to be very tentative to continue working with you. Ultimately, they're choosing to have this partnership with you. So I was wondering a bit about how you handle those kind of situations.
Well, even before Take Me was born, I grew from zero a taxi company in Leicester. So over the years, I learned, you bought taxi companies, and sometimes you just buy an expensive phone number because you go in there, guns blazing, change the system, change the management, rebrand it, whatever. And after a year, you've lost all your drivers. So drivers are very sensitive to change. In most cases now, we try and keep the owner on board, or at least their number two. We don't go there like a ball in the China shop. But our network is all about working together and collaboration. That's how it was born. It was kind of born from the ride idea and taking it to the next level. But drivers don't like change. So when we've done, I think most of our deals, 16 of them now in the last year, most of them, the owners are still on board. And all we've done is empower that owner with extra resources. So he then, speaks to the drivers, and the drivers are happy that he's now got this help on it that he can have and resources. So like Rachel said earlier, that means they or him or her can concentrate on the two elements of the business, which are the customers and the drivers, concentrate on the revenue, and we take all that away. So it's really important not to go in there and break them. So, I mean, that's why we have some companies on iCabby, Cab9, Autocab, because at the moment it's not about changing the technology, it's about just keeping those relationships going and making savings behind the curtain.
All right. I don't know that we've got any other questions. One final thing, I think before we sort of break out to the networking lounge that I'd like to cover. Is there anything that you've tried, anything specific that really hasn't worked in terms of driver retention? Like, was there anything where you tried it and I know a lot of time investment and it just fell flat?
Offering money.
Offering money.
Yeah, it doesn't work. They don't stay. You probably get 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that's it, and they've gone.
And the other thing on that, you can then upset your existing client driver base. You know, you don't offer like you bring your friend along and we'll give you 2 weeks or money, and then the other drivers think, "Hang on, people are being rewarded there for you know, I've been working for years, and you're giving the reward to somebody else." So yeah, those don't work. They might be short term, but they don't work long term.
Yeah, they don't work. They're long term, they won't last.
Right. That's really interesting. That, and I suppose, you know, it makes perfect sense because ultimately, if everyone's throwing money at the drivers, it's a race to the bottom, isn't it? So it's about building the relationships, not just transactions. So yeah, that's a really interesting one. Well, I think that just about does it for us. So I suggest that we move into the networking lounge now for further discussion. Of course, any of the attendees on this call can come and talk with each other, talk with speakers, talk with Jenna and Matt on on product features, how to make the most of them to improve driver happiness. But again, thank you immensely for your time. It's been a fantastic conversation. Really glad to get your thoughts on all of these subjects. And thank you as well, Jenna, for the feature in-depth presentation too. So
thank you very much.
I suspect
thank you for inviting me.